Before we begin, if you're finding peace through these sessions, we'd love for you to take a moment, when you're awake, of course, to leave a review and subscribe on whatever channel you're listening on. Your support helps others discover this space and join our journey to restful sleep. Welcome to Slothful Slumber, the podcast where we transform the vast knowledge of the internet into a gentle lullaby for your mind. I'm your host, Luna Dreamwell, and I'm here to guide you on a journey to tranquility through the soothing cadence of Wikipedia articles. Each episode will delve into the most wonderfully mundane and sleep-inducing topics, helping you drift off into a realm of serene dreams. So find your comfortable space, close your eyes, and let the dull hum of information carry you into a restful slumber. This Wikipedia article is titled Baking. Baking is a method of preparing food that uses dry heat, typically in an oven, but it can also be done in hot ashes or on hot stones. Bread is the most commonly baked item, but many other types of food can also be baked. Heat is gradually transferred from the surface of cakes, cookies, and pieces of bread to their center, typically conducted at elevated temperatures surpassing 300 degrees Fahrenheit, 150 degrees Celsius. Dry heat cooking imparts a distinctive richness to foods through the processes of caramelization and surface browning. As heat travels through, it transforms batters and doughs into baked goods and more, with a firm, dry crust and a softer center. Baking can be combined with grilling to produce a hybrid barbecue variant by using both methods simultaneously or one after the other. Baking is related to barbecuing because the concept of the masonry oven is similar to that of a smoke pit. Baking has traditionally been performed at home for day-to-day meals and in bakeries and restaurants for local consumption. When production was industrialized, baking was automated by machines in large factories. The art of baking remains a fundamental skill and is important for nutrition, as baked goods, especially bread, are a common and important food, both from an economic and cultural point of view. A person who prepares baked goods as a profession is called a baker. Foods and techniques. All types of food can be baked, but some require special care and protection from direct heat. Various techniques have been developed to provide this protection. In addition to bread, baking is used to prepare cakes, pastries, pies, tarts, quiches, cookies, scones, crackers, pretzels, and more. These popular items are known collectively as baked goods and are often sold at a bakery, which is a store that carries only baked goods, or at markets, grocery stores, farmers markets, or through other venues. Meat, including cured meats like ham, however, baking is typically reserved for meatloaf, smaller cuts of whole meat, or whole meats that are stuffed or coated with breadcrumbs or buttermilk batter. Some foods are surrounded with moisture during baking by placing a small amount of liquid, such as water or broth, in the bottom of a closed pan and letting it steam up around the food. Roasting is a term synonymous with baking, but traditionally denotes the cooking of whole animals or major cuts through exposure to dry heat. For instance, One bakes chicken parts, but roasts the whole bird. One can bake pork or lamb chops, but roasts the whole loin or leg. There are many exceptions to this rule of the two terms. Baking and roasting, otherwise, involve the same range of cooking times and temperatures. Another form of baking is the method known as en croûte, French for in crust, referring to a pastry crust, which protects the food from direct heat and seals the natural juices inside. Meat, poultry, game, fish, or vegetables can be prepared by baking en croûte. Well-known examples include beef Wellington, where the beef is encased in pastry before baking; pâté en croûte, where the terrine is encased in pastry before baking; and the Vietnamese variant, a meat-filled pastry called pâté chaud. The en croûte method also allows meat to be baked by burying it in the embers of a fire. A favorite method of cooking venison, salt can also be used to make a protective crust that is not eaten. Another method of protecting food from the heat while it is baking is to cook it en papillote, French for in parchment. In this method, the food is covered by baking paper or aluminum foil to protect it while it is being baked. The cooked parcel of food is sometimes served unopened, allowing diners to discover the contents for themselves. Eggs can also be used in baking to produce savory or sweet dishes. In combination with dairy products, especially cheese, they are often prepared as a dessert. For example, although a baked custard can be made using starch, in the form of flour, corn flour, arrowroot, or potato flour, the flavor of the dish is much more delicate if eggs are used as the thickening agent. Baked custards, such as creme caramel, are among the items that need protection from an oven's direct heat, and the bain-marie method serves this purpose. The cooking container is half submerged in water in another, larger one, so that the heat in the oven is more gently applied during the baking process. Baking a successful soufflé requires that the baking process be carefully controlled. The oven temperature must be absolutely even, and the oven space must not be shared with another dish. These factors, along with the theatrical effect of an air-filled dessert, have given this baked food a reputation for being a culinary achievement. Similarly, a good baking technique and a good oven are also needed to create a baked Alaska because of the difficulty of baking hot meringue and cold ice cream at the same time. Baking can also be used to prepare other foods such as pizzas, baked potatoes, baked apples, baked beans, some casseroles, and pasta dishes such as lasagna. Baking in ancient times. The earliest known form of baking occurred when humans took wild grass grains, soaked them in water, and mashed the mixture into a kind of broth-like paste. The paste was cooked by pouring it onto a flat, hot rock, resulting in a bread-like substance. Later, as humans mastered fire, they roasted the paste on hot embers, making bread-making more convenient as it could be done whenever fire was created. According to Britannica, the ancient Egyptians invented the first ovens. They also baked bread using yeast, which they had previously been using to brew beer. By 2600 BCE, they were making bread in ways similar in principle to those of today. The book Bread for the Wilderness states that ovens and work tables have been discovered in archaeological digs from Turkey, Hasalar, to Palestine, Jericho, Tel es Sultan, and date back to 5600 BC. Baking flourished during the Roman Empire. Beginning around 300 BC, the pastry cook became an occupation for Romans, known as the pastillarium, and became a respected profession because pastries were considered decadent, and Romans loved festivity and celebration. Thus, pastries were often cooked, especially for large banquets, and any pastry cook who could invent new types of tasty treats was highly prized. Around 1 AD, there were more than 300 pastry chefs in Rome, and Cato wrote about how they created all sorts of diverse foods and flourished professionally and socially because of their creations. Cato speaks of an enormous number of breads, including libum, cakes made with flour and honey, often sacrificed to gods, placenta, groats and cress, spira, modern-day flour pretzels, scibolata, tortes, savillum, sweet cake, and globus aferica, fritters. A great selection of these, with many different variations, different ingredients, and varied patterns, were often found at banquets and dining halls. The Romans baked bread in an oven with its own chimney and had mills to grind grain into flour. A baker's guild was established in 168 BC in Rome. Commercial baking. Eventually, the Roman art of baking became known throughout Europe and eventually spread to eastern parts of Asia. By the 13th century in London, commercial trading, including baking, had many regulations attached. In the case of food, they were designed to create a system so there was little possibility of false measures, adulterated food, or shoddy manufactures. There were by that time 20 regulations applying to bakers alone, including that every baker had to have the impression of his seal upon bread. Beginning in the 19th century, alternative leavening agents became more common, such as baking soda. Bakers often baked goods at home and then sold them in the streets. This scene was so common that Rembrandt, among others, painted a pastry chef selling pancakes in the streets of Germany, with children clamoring for a sample. In London, pastry chefs sold their goods from handcarts. This developed into a delivery system of baked goods to households and greatly increased demand as a result. In Paris, the first open-air cafe of baked goods was developed, and baking became an established art throughout the entire world. Baking eventually developed into a commercial industry using automated machinery, which enabled more goods to be produced for widespread distribution. In the United States, the baking industry was built on marketing methods used during feudal times and production techniques developed by the Romans. Some makers of snacks, such as potato chips or crisps, have produced baked versions of their snack products as an alternative to the usual cooking method of deep frying in an attempt to reduce their calorie or fat content. Baking has opened up doors to businesses such as cake shops and factories, where the baking process is done with larger amounts in large, open furnaces. The aroma and texture of baked goods as they come out of the oven are strongly appealing but is a quality that is quickly lost. Since the flavor and appeal largely depend on freshness, commercial producers have to compensate by using food additives as well as imaginative labeling. As more and more baked goods are purchased from commercial suppliers, producers try to capture that original appeal by adding the label home-baked. Such attempts seek to make an emotional link to the remembered freshness of baked goods, as well as to attach positive associations the purchaser has with the idea of home to the bought product. Freshness is such an important quality that restaurants, although they are commercial and not domestic preparers of food, bake their own products. For example, scones at the Ritz London Hotel are not baked until early afternoon on the day they are to be served to make sure they are as fresh as possible. Equipment. Baking needs an enclosed space for heating, typically in an oven. Formerly, primitive clay ovens were in use. The fuel can be supplied by wood, coal, gas, or electricity. Adding and removing items from an oven may be done by hand with an oven mitt or by a peel, a long-handled tool specifically used for that purpose. Many commercial ovens are equipped with two heating elements, one for baking, using convection and thermal conduction to heat the food, and one for broiling or grilling, heating mainly by radiation. Another piece of equipment still used for baking is the Dutch oven, also called a bake kettle, bastable, bread oven, fire pan, bake oven, keilpot, tin kitchen, roasting kitchen, du feu, French, gentle fire, or feu de campagne, French, country oven. It originally replaced the cooking jack as the latest fireside cooking technology, combining the convenience of pot oven and hangover oven. Asian cultures have adopted steam baskets to produce the effect of baking while reducing the amount of fat needed. Other equipment/tools needed for baking precision include a method for measuring ingredients. Ideally, a scale accurate to the gram is used, as exact measurements provide the best results. But some bakers rely on measuring cups and measuring spoons. Digital kitchen scales are also popular in baking, where precise measurements are a must for dry ingredients. The tare function simplifies the process by allowing multiple ingredients to be measured in the same mixing bowl, resetting the scale to 0 between each addition and eliminating the need for extra measuring tools. Process. 11 events occur concurrently during baking, some of which, such as starch gelatinization, would not occur at room temperature. Fats melt. Gases form and expand. Microorganisms die. Sugar dissolves. Egg, milk, and gluten proteins coagulate. Starches gelatinize or solidify. Liquids evaporate. Caramelization and Maillard browning occur on crust. Enzymes are denatured. Changes occur to nutrients. Pectin breaks down. The dry heat of baking changes the form of starches in the food and causes its outer surfaces to brown, giving it an attractive appearance and taste. The browning is caused by the caramelization of sugars and the Maillard reaction. Maillard browning occurs when sugars break down in the presence of proteins. Because foods contain many different types of sugars and proteins, Maillard browning contributes to the flavor of a wide range of foods, including nuts, roast beef, and baked bread. The moisture is never entirely sealed in. Over time, an item being baked will become dry. This is often an advantage, especially in situations where drying is the desired outcome, like drying herbs or roasting certain types of vegetables. The baking process does not require any fat to be used to cook in an oven. When baking, consideration must be given to the amount of fat that is contained in the food item. Higher levels of fat, such as margarine, butter, lard, or vegetable shortening, will cause an item to spread out during the baking process. With the passage of time, breads harden and become stale. This is not primarily due to moisture being lost from the baked products, but more a reorganization of the way in which the water and starch are associated over time. This process is similar to recrystallization and is promoted by storage at cool temperatures, such as in a domestic refrigerator or freezer. Cultural and religious significance. Baking, especially of bread, holds special significance for many cultures. It is such a fundamental part of everyday food consumption that the children's nursery rhyme, pat a cake, baker's man, takes baking as its subject. Baked goods are normally served at all kinds of parties, and special attention is given to their quality at formal events. They are also one of the main components of a tea party, including at nursery teas and high teas, a tradition which started in Victorian Britain. Reportedly, when Anna Russell, Duchess of Bedford, grew tired of the sinking feeling which afflicted her every afternoon round 4 o'clock. In 1840, she plucked up courage and asked for a tray of tea, bread and butter, and cake to be brought to her room. Once she had formed the habit, she found she could not break it, so spread it among her friends instead. As the century progressed, afternoon tea became increasingly elaborate. The Benedictine sisters of the Benedictine monastery of Caltanissetta baked a pastry called crocetta of Caltanissetta, cross of Caltanissetta. They used to be prepared for the Holy Crucifix festivity. The monastery was situated next to the Church of the Holy Cross, from which these sweet pastries take the name. For Jews, matzo is a baked product of considerable religious and ritual significance. Baked matzah bread can be ground up and used in other dishes, such as gefilte fish, and baked again. For Christians, bread has to be baked to be used as an essential component of the sacrament of the Eucharist. In the Eastern Christian tradition, baked bread in the form of birds is given to children to carry to the fields in a spring ceremony that celebrates the 40 martyrs of Sebasti. Jesus defines himself as the bread of life, John 6:35. Divine grace is called bread of the strong, and preaching, religious teaching, the bread of the Word of God. In Roman Catholicism, the piece of blessed wax encased in a reliquary is the sacred bread. In Hebrew, Bethlehem means the house of bread, and Christians see in the fact that Jesus was born before moving to Nazareth, in a city of that name, the significance of his sacrifice via the Eucharist. The Eucharist is often interpreted as a connection to the Holy Spirit, a symbol of God's love, and an invitation to reflect that love in service to others, providing strength for living out one's faith.